Hey everyone, my name is David Rao, and you might have seen me before here on this Facebook page, or maybe you've seen me through my blog, which is makemomentsmatter.org, or you've heard my podcast, Make Moments Matter, a music education podcast. It's in the iTunes store. You can find it. Apparently, I need to learn how to search it. Or maybe you've seen me on Instagram. I've shared a lot of things there. But today I wanted to come here to Facebook Live to share with you a little bit about how I do recorder karate. Because I know that when I first started teaching, I thought recorder karate was awesome, but I didn't really know what to do with recorder karate. I didn't know how to integrate it into my curriculum. And so I wanted to share with you some tips and tricks, things that have worked well for me to make recorder karate work in my classroom. And so let me just start out with what is recorder karate. Some people have seen things on Pinterest, or maybe they've heard a little bit about it. But recorder karate is based on a book. So there's this book by, I know it looks backwards because my phone, by Barb Philippak. I think that's how you say her name. I hope I'm saying that right. But recorder karate was started because Barb, when she started teaching, knew that she had to teach 4th and 5th grade recorder and had never taught recorder or never played recorder when she was in elementary school. I was the same way. I didn't play it in elementary school, so when I knew I was going to teach it, I was stressed out because I didn't know what I was going to do. So she's the same way. So she decided she was going to come up with this system to teach recorder karate to her kids. And basically she took a bunch of different folk songs, things that she knew would work well, and teach concepts. She put them in order so that they would go from least complex to most complex, adding new concepts with each song. And then she aligned them with different colors. And it sort of took after karate, where if you're doing martial arts, especially karate, if you learn certain things, you can take a test and you can earn a different belt, a literal belt that you tie around yourself. But she decided for a recorder, she would have a little belt to tie around the recorder. So when a student had learned a certain concept and could play a song, they'd get a little reward, a little belt to tie around the recorder. Cool idea. So the songs she chose were songs that were folk songs. They started not very difficult and got more difficult. So the very first song is Hot Cross Buns, which of course every kid knows how to play, and it's sort of awesome because then they start out and the very first song, they're successful because everybody can play that song because everyone's older brother or whatever taught them that song when they were in first grade, or whatever. Somehow every kid knows how to play Hot Cross Buns. Who knows? So she sequenced these songs, and it went from those easier songs that were just BAG songs. About the 4th song in, she started adding more notes. By the time you get to the last belt in the song, you have quite a few notes under your belt. My dad would be so proud of that joke. It was because it was terrible and there was a pun. Anyway, so each song has more difficult concepts. So by the time you get to the end, you really do have to learn some things to be able to play that last song. It's not just a super easy song. So the other thing she wanted to do about recorder karate, she wanted to differentiate. She knew there were going to be students who were lower and some were higher, some who could work well on their own and some who wouldn't, some who'd take the recorder home. But she wanted all students to be engaged. She wanted them to want to earn the belt. And so the belts really helped her. Associating it with colors and showing off their learning really helped. And this really did work well for her. I found it works well even for my students, and has worked at a couple of different schools that I've tried it at when I've taught in different areas. So what I will say is that it is not a standalone. You don't buy the book and only teach this. And I tried it my first year because I didn't know what I was doing. And if that's what you do, probably it's not going to be as successful. For me, it's a book that and it's a resource that you integrate into other things that you are doing. Or you can even use this as a framework, and you can start out with the BAG songs and follow that. When you get to that 4th song, you add E, you teach that, and you add that. But it's a framework. It is not all by itself, because if these are the only songs you do with students, they're only going to know 9 songs, and probably they're not going to be very successful. So I'll talk with you in just a minute about how I integrate that in and the ways that I incorporate that. But let me just say that it's worth buying the book. There are a lot of people who are like, that's a cool idea, I'm going to do it myself. Well, you can do that, but the book is worth it for a lot of different reasons. First of all, it already has all the songs sequenced for you. It has them printed out in a nice format. Each one has the song and has some little tips and a fingering chart at the bottom. That's nice. The other thing I would say is that it has all of these extras. It gives you her story at the beginning. It talks about recorder karate. It talks about some tips and things that'll make it work well. It gives you tips for how to test. It gives you tips about noise control if you have a lot of students playing in a little room. It actually gives you a rubric for how to grade a student or how to decide if a student has earned their belt, what to look for, and how to use that. The other thing that I just really like about it is all of these things in the back are reproducible, and over and over it says in the book, you can reproduce to use for your students. So you buy it once, and it even says if you are in multiple buildings, you do not need to buy multiple copies. Use your copy as the teacher copy, and you can reproduce for however many students you need, which is great. I mean, how many times can you buy a resource and are allowed to reproduce it immediately? I think it's a great thing. So not only are the songs reproducible, in the back it also has quizzes. It has, where are the other things? It has ideas for how to show and use iconic notation. It has little things about how to teach students how to count, reminders, things that you can post in your room or give to students. This is really cool. It has a roster for you to write down student names, and you can write down what day they earned their belt. So when you test, it has clip art for you to cut out and copy and put on things. It just has a ton of extras, and it is not that expensive. I can't remember when I got it how much I paid, but I remember looking at it and thinking like, for what I'm going to use it for, it's not that expensive. You can actually buy it from Music K-8 from Plank Road Publishing. And I'm not sponsored by Plank Road Publishing. I really like them. They're a good company, so I'll sponsor them. I'll mention them. You can buy it from Music K-8, and you can buy, what I did is I bought the hard copy and the online digital copy. So I got a PDF of the book and I got the book because I knew I would want it at my computer to display for students, and I would also want it when I'm up at my piano teaching. Buy the book, it's worth it. Okay, that said, moving on. But remember, it's not a standalone thing. Oh, and one other thing I forgot to tell you, another great extra is that it has this thing called the online dojo where students can log in and can play the recordings at home. So if they want to practice at home, they can practice with the actual music. And it has a lot of helpers for students that just come with the resource, whether you buy the book or buy the online copy as well, the PDF copy. So that's really cool. Okay, how do I introduce this to my class? So when we start our recorder unit, there's the, forever and ever we're worrying about, did you bring your money in and blah, 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 and writing names and all that. That's a pain. But any recorder teacher has to do that if students are buying their own recorders. If you are just using class recorders, it's not quite the same. So when I'm teaching this to students, I get them started. We're learning B and A and G. I don't do recorder karate the first day. In fact, I don't even talk about it the first day. We're just doing our songs. We're learning our notes. We're learning good tone. We're learning good breath control, all of those things. A week or so in, I talk about the concept. I talk about recorder karate, how we're going to be working to earn these belts and how we're going to be working to do tests later on and how that's going to work. I show students my recorder. Ooh, I have all of my belts. I'm a black belt in recorder, guys. And they're so excited. They're like, what's that mean? And some kid's like, I do Taekwondo. I'm like, great. Okay, let me tell you about this then. Anyway, so I talk about recorder karate, and I show them that there are 9 different belts and that there's a song for each of those belts. And if you can play the song, then you can earn the belt. And if you play the song without errors, you earn the belt, and you get to show it off to people and blah, blah, blah. One of the other things I've done in the past at other schools is that I have, on my wall, I've taken these like felt squares from Hobby Lobby or Michael's or wherever, and I made a pagoda, basically, and in between each felt square I put a little tier. And so each kid got their little name with the little Velcro on the back, and when they earned their belt, they got to move their name up the pagoda until they got to black belt, which they were so psyched about. I don't have room at this school to put it up, and I'm trying to think of other ways I can do that. I know some teachers put out like a piece of paper and you get to sign it and whatever when you earn your belt. That's a cool thing. But first of all, just putting your belt on, that's great. If you're at a school where you let students use and borrow recorders, you don't want them to tie them onto school recorders, so you could do the signing on the wall. This year, my new idea is to get little keychains. I bought like 100 of them on Amazon for like $6. But you get the little keychain, and when you earn your belt, you get to tie it onto the keychain. I'm going to put it on a cord or a bracelet or something so that students can like carry it around or take it. That's my plan. I'll let you know how that works. But something to show off that the student has achieved, either earning the belt or writing their name or whatever. You could give them certificates for each one. I usually wait and just give them a certificate on black belt. But that is encouraging. So to have that stuff on the wall, or to have a recorder with the belts, or to have other students with the belts on, that's encouraging right away to show students like, ooh, I can earn the belt. How exciting. So I show them the belts. I talk about how it's earning. And then we prep them for the first test. So leading up to the test one, it's hot cross buns, so a lot of them already know it, but I show them what the music, what it's going to look like when they test. I play through with the recording. We work through it as a class. We talk about the hard stuff. We label the things, whatever. And then we get ready. And then for testing, when testing day comes around, we do our testing. I'll talk about that in a second. And then after a testing day, we move on to the next song, and we start talking about that, and we work through that as a class, and we do all of that along with the other things. Again, it's not a standalone. So in the second song, it's the yellow belt is the next song. It's more sort of lyrical. They talk about breath support in the song. So I then take other activities where we're doing more of that, doing more of the stepping. And this really is, I think, a harder song for a lot of kids because hot cross buns, they know. They don't know this one. And so it really is testing. Can they read the notes, or can they learn the music, whatever. And so it's nice to work on that in class between testing times. And so every time we test, you can earn your belt or not. And if you earn your belt, great. Then you can move on. If you didn't earn your belt, you get a retest. But I always work on the belt songs in class so they get some support. Some kids work way ahead on their own at home. Great. But some kids need the help in class, so I always try and do that. Okay, am I remembering to say all the things? I hope so. Okay, so testing. The very first year I did this, testing was a disaster. Like, it was terrible. I had this idea like, ooh, I'm going to do this song in class like maybe once or whatever, and then we're going to test, and they're all going to be successful. And clearly that didn't happen because that doesn't happen. Kids just don't get it right away. So I made sure the second year to really prep ahead of tests, to do the song in class, let them hear what the recording sounds like, maybe do like a mock version of what it's going to look like when you test. And then I had a little bit more success. The other thing I learned is my first year I was like, okay, kids, scatter around the room and you can practice what you're going to play for your test, and then when you get called up, then you get a test. And we're going to have testing and on deck and in the hole, because apparently I cared about baseball at that point. I don't know. I thought that was a great system. That didn't work for me. Just have kids scattered around the room. They made so much noise. They weren't on task. They didn't understand on deck, in the hole, blah, 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 because apparently they hadn't played baseball or didn't care. I don't know. But it didn't work. So I needed something that worked better. So what I decided to do was that I came up with a set of stations. And so at each station, kids are doing something different. And I sequence them to match the colors of the belts. So I have 8 stations, and there are 9 belts. It goes white, yellow, orange, green, purple, blue, red, brown, black belt. So I took off the white, which is the lowest, and I did 8 stations. Why 8? Because 8 is easier to divide a class into 8 sections than 9 sections. So I did 8 different stations, and I already had my classes divided into 4 different teams in each class, so I just cut them in half. So then I have 8 little mini teams of about 3 or 4 kids, and then each of those mini groups would be at a station. And when you're at the station, you do what the station says. When you hear the bell, then you move on. And one of the stations, the last station, the black belt station, is the testing station. So as they're moving around the room at each station, I'm reinforcing different concepts. I'll show you those stations in a second. And then when they get to the black belt, well, then they test. And so on a testing day, the very first thing they come in, I just go through and I show them each of the stations. I show them what they're going to do, I talk through it, I get them through, then I get them to their station, and then I give them their recorder, and then we get off, and we're off and running. So here's what I did. So like I said, I colored each station for a couple reasons. First, because I wanted kids to know the progression. Yellow, orange, on and on. White, yellow, orange, blah, 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 and on and on. I also did it so I could help separate my materials so I knew what was at each, because I'm not going to put the same thing at each station. And then I set them around the room, and kids can go from each one. I actually love color coding, believe it or not. If you've seen anything else from my blog, you probably know this already. But I love color coding. So one of the things I did was I made these big cards. There's just a little bit of cardboard being propped up on the back. But I made one for each color. So there's yellow belt, there's orange belt, green belt, purple belt, blue, red, brown, black. And I put those out around the room, and at each station I put a little folder. I love color coding. And I wrote it in, and then this is a 4th grade station. This is a 5th grade station. You might be like, that's stupid. It's obnoxiously big. Yes, but when I am trying to prep stations for 4th grade and a separate set for 5th grade that have more complex concepts, this helps me know. And if the kids are putting things away and they put this in the wrong thing, then it's quick and easy for me to see and move it back to where it needs to be. So each station has its own little folder, and it has the grade level on the front and the color. That made things sort of easy for me to separate out. And then I show kids what we do at each station. So let me just show you what my 4th graders did this first time when we tested. Yellow station was it comes right after black, so if you test and earn your white belt, the very next thing you're going to want to do is get the homework for the next belt. So the next station is the homework station, where they can pull out their homework for yellow belt, which is what they'll earn next. And I also put it right next to my reading center, so if kids want to pick up a book and read, great, or they can work ahead on the next station. So that's the first one. After that, in the orange station, I put in this great set of worksheets from Aileen Miracle, and it's read and play patterns. And so all that kids do is that they read the rhythm, and it says play it on B, play it on B, play it on A, play it on G. Aileen, in her pack, I think it's from Ready, Set, Record. I don't know. You can. I'll put a link in the comments when I'm done with the live feed. But the great thing about it is that it has different rhythms. So the one that you just saw has tas and TTs and rests. Some of them have half notes. Some of them have different versions of tas and TTs. You can put these in however you want. I put in, I think, 3 or 4 different read and play pages, so that if a kid's like, well, I finished one, okay, well then take another one and try that, which is sort of nice. After that, I did the green station. I did something different. So I pulled out my Fishin' for a Melody cards, which I've done another live video about these, so I'm not going to go into depth with these too much. But each color has its own sort of thing to do. So this card has a note and a rhythm that you need to play, and you can put them in different orders and create a little song out of that. This card has 2 different notes and a rhythm you need to play, so kids can choose. B, B, A, 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 B, A, B, B, A, whatever. And I know that's not a B or an A, so you perfect pitch people, don't write me a nasty comment about that. Anyway, but then that's one of the things. We've already done this in class, so trying it at a station on your own, they should be successful. I hope they're successful. Purple station was another thing from Aileen's set, from her Ready, Set, I don't remember the name of it. I bought it so many years ago. And this is roll and play. So they get a die, and they get to roll the die, or roll the dice, and then they play. And again, this is nice because they get to choose. So this one, you can sort of see it has notes on the staff. So if you roll a 4, you play that. But that's not the only way you can do it. You can also do rhythms like this. These are all in her pack. They're in her set, and I printed off a couple different ones. So if this is too complex for a kid, they can do this instead at the station and still be successful. Okay, that's that station. Don't forget to include dice. Blue comes after purple, and this one I pulled from another resource that I created years and years ago, Spotlight on the Instruments. This was one little game that I had made for that set, And I decided, why not try it? We need to review the instruments. So it's just the different instrument cards, and they get to sort them into the families. And for as much time as they spent at the station, which is not very much, this is a perfect activity. It takes just a couple minutes. They can work as a team to do that, which is great. And that was something that I had printed out for a completely different unit, but I was like, I need something to put in this folder, and it just fit right in, and kids could do it. Red comes next. At the red station, I have the slightly more complex version of these Fishing for a Melody cards from that same set that I talked about before. This one you play whatever it says, put them in different orders, make a melody. These you play, but it has a couple blanks with just the rhythms. And so you have to decide what you want to put in there. Dixie, you said, recorder stations, tell me more. There's actually another live video on my page where I talk for like, I don't know how long, probably too long, about how I use my recorder stations cards. Okay, last station, brown. This is the one that, oh, maybe you meant stations and not those cards. Either way, we're talking about it. Brown station is the one that comes right before their testing station. So Lord knows what they're going to want to do is practice. So inside this station, I have a little version of what they're going to play next so that they can pull it out and play. So those are my stations for 4th grade. You can do a lot of different things. I've tried a lot of different things in the past. One time I had whiteboards with the staff on it, and I had put a little whiteboard marker, and I put this thing and said, what words can you write? And so they had to write in with the little circle or with notes or whatever on the staff, write different words. I've also done it where I take another song that's on the level of what they're learning. So if they just learned low D, I pull out a song with low D, and I copy it off and I put it in there, and that's a song they have to sight read and try out. There are a lot of different things you can do. In the past, I've done a book station where they can read. I've done writing where you're like writing on the staff or writing rhythms. I've done a listening station, which is too much work. You really just shouldn't do that, because I like set up a CD player and get headphones and untangle the headphones every day, and I just show them how to not break the CD player. Is a pain. Don't do it. I've done worksheets, like I showed you some of the ones that I printed off that they can play. You could do worksheets where they have to write it in, but in the past when I did that, either I just went through a lot of them really fast and they didn't really do the worksheets all that well, or I printed them on cardstock and laminated them, and then they had to do a dry erase. That didn't dry off very well. So worksheets sort of decide what your best option is. I like the worksheets like the one I showed you from Aileen, where they can see something and play it, and then they don't have to write on it or do anything else. I've also done practice stations like the brown belt I just talked about, and then I've done like read and play. I've done games. You could do anything at the stations when you do that. I'm going to quick look at this question. So can you just do a karate station with different stations? Can you just do karate stations where at different stations targeting a concept not involving recorders? Oh, yeah. I mean, I do some stations where it's recorder stuff, and I do some where it's not. Because 4th and 5th grade, we're not just learning recorders. We're learning a lot of different things. And so I've done where I've had all of them be recorder, but it's nice to not have all 8 stations be playing stations, because that really adds volume. So when you have a couple stations where they're just working, or they're sitting quietly or reading or something else, it's nice to have that. Then you don't have quite so much noise going on. I also, as we're rotating through, I stop every once in a while and I turn on my classroom microphone and I say, ooh, great job, blue station. I heard you guys were playing so well. Or I might say, purple station, if you keep up this, because I know who's doing that, if you keep that up, your station's going to get shut down. Like, I call them out on that. And that sort of helps keep the stations rotating, or maybe I'll do a walkthrough or whatever while the black belt kids are setting up. And then just to sort of remind them and keep them in line. So black belt is the testing station, and at the testing station, Eliza, this will answer your question, it just takes a couple minutes to test. I let kids play twice. I let them play one time to practice and one time for the actual test. I'm actually listening to them both times, so if they get it perfectly the first time and have a flub the second time, I'm like, I don't know, I was listening both times, so you did it fine. But I'm listening both times, especially if it's more complex and I need to really listen more carefully. I do it a couple times. So at the station, there are 3 or 4 kids. they play all together. I like this for a couple reasons. One, it speeds up the process a little bit. Two, they don't like playing absolutely by themselves, and so it helps them, especially on those early belts, to be playing with someone. Even if a kid has earned a belt, I let them play with the kid who hasn't, and then it gives them a little bit more confidence, and I just listen to the kid who really needs it. So I do 3 or 4 at a time. If I do practice once, play once, it takes them maybe a minute, minute and a half at each station, and then we rotate. And so if I need to go through and listen another time, I can. If I don't, that's fine. And one of the things that I do at the black belt station is that I listen, and we get our belts there. I tie on the recorder belt for them if they earn it. One of the other things I do is that I check to see if their name is on the back, and I rewrite it on if I need to, because I don't want kids to be mixing up their recorders, so I do that. The other thing is, on the back of all my recorders, I put a little hole reinforcer sticker, and I do that so they know where to place their right thumb, so they're not just moving their hand all around. And so that's one of the other things that I check, just basic recorder maintenance. And then that's what we do at the black station, and then we rotate. So when they're done with black, they go to yellow and they start the rotation over. The first day we don't get all the way through, and a lot of times we don't get all the way through. In her book, Barb says that she does the last 10 or 15 minutes of class through stations or testing. You could do it that way. You could take a day every 3rd or 4th day and do it. It's sort of up to you of how you want to test or not. But I like to do it every 3rd or 4th day or something, so we have time in between where it's not just testing every day, and then we get a chance to learn and practice the concepts in class. How long to get those stations prepared? Seems like a lot of work. Yes, Jesse, it was a lot of work, but some of those stations I made 3 years ago. So the very first time, yes, it took me a long time to set everything up, but I have used things over and over now, so feels like a good payoff. You just use them forever. And Jennifer, you said, what do you do if you forgot a recorder? I say that you can, if you earn your belt, I'll hold it, and the next day you bring your recorder, I'll tie it on for you. I don't let them take them home because they'll lose it, and then they'll want another one or whatever. So I tie it on for them, or if they don't have a recorder and they're just borrowing, like I said a little while ago, my new thing, I'm going to try it, is to have these little keychains where they get to tie on their recorder. One of the nice things when I had the bulletin board on the wall is that even though if they don't have their recorder there, they can move their name up, or they can sign their name or whatever, and then later we can tie their recorder belt on. I see my kids every other day for 30 minutes, which I know is phenomenal. And so I can go several days, and then I can test every 3rd or 4th day. I have a 30-minute class, and so I don't want to spend too much of my time testing, but I do want to keep them interested and excited. So I usually have about 3 or 4 days in between a testing day where we're learning the next concept or whatever and moving on. Let's see if I've talked about all the things in my notes I'm supposed to talk to you about. Yes, different tasks. Okay. So, belts. I make my own. You can buy them from Plank Road Publishing or a lot of different places. Some people use those little rainbow loom bands on the end. That might work great. I just don't want to introduce another weapon into the classroom where they're just shooting them at each other, because I feel like that's what's going to happen. And so I don't do that. What I did is, again, like 6 years ago, I went out and bought a ream of yarn in every single color I needed, and I cut them myself. And on my blog, I actually show how I just take a can of garbanzo beans or soup or whatever, and I wrap the yarn around it, and then I take scissors and cut through, and it has all the right lengths. And just because I'm fussy, at the end of each belt, I tie a little knot, so then it doesn't unravel or whatever. And they're pretty small, but they tie on really well, and they stay on. I double knot them on. And the black belt, I bought a bigger yarn so that it shows up, and it's just so exciting. Kids love that. One of the other things I do is that for testing, again, this is another one, Jesse, that I maybe spent too long doing this one time, and now I use them over and over forever. So I took the different recorder karate things, I shrunk them down to the right size, because again, Barb says in her book, over and over, reproduce the music, reproduce the pictures, whatever you need to make it work for your school. And so I'm able to do this. I shrunk them down to the right size. I put them on different colors, so each color that you're going to earn matches this color. This makes it easy for me to pull it out and grab it for students. I laminated them, of course, and then I put them on these little stands, and then they stand up on a little music stand or a table or whatever, and then kids, they just come up, they play it. Kids don't get to play from their homework. They must play from my card because sometimes they have every single note written in, and I just want to challenge them. I know some people are like, you should let them have their notes written in. Okay, go for it. But in my classroom, I don't let them do that, and I let them play from my music. If it's a special circumstance, I might change that. But I made 4 of each of these, so they come in all these different colors, and it's easy for me to just grab the orange one or grab the green one or whatever that kid is testing on, set it up and let them test. And then once that black belt station is done, I ring the bell and we move on. So every kid gets to test. As they're testing, I'm looking for finger positions. I'm listening for the right sounds. I also have my own version. I typed up a little roster, and one of the things that I have is the colors along the top. I have the kids' names on the side, and if you see the darker and lighter, it's because I have each little mini group sort of sectioned off, and then when they earn a belt, I write the date, because how many times a kid like, I earned the belt, and I'm like, well, I don't know, I don't have a check mark for you. So I got smart after my second year, and I started writing the date that they got it. I'm like, well, on 4/10 you earned yellow, but you haven't earned orange or whatever. And so then I quick write that down as we're going through, just sort of to remember who had what. So I do all of that as we're testing, and it actually is pretty easy. The very first day, it stinks when they're testing. You don't get all the way through because kids just need a little bit of help at each station to like figure out what they're doing and remember like, oh, stations where Mr. Rao's not circling around, he's listening to somebody, and they just need to like learn the process. So I intentionally go slow. The second or third time you do it, it's like bam, through a class in a day, and it's easy. You have a little time left over. My rule is that you can only test for 1 belt every time you come to the black station. So if you earn your yellow belt, you can't test right away for orange, even if you're so good at it and you really want to. Sorry. You have to go around the rotation, and when you come back, then you can test for orange. So the less you complain, if you move through to the next station, maybe you'll get back here today and you're going to test for orange. I know I'm like the meanest teacher for saying that. But anyway, that's how I work it. If you have questions, leave them in the comments. But let me tell you a couple more little extra things, and then I'll stop. So the bulletin boards. I talked a little bit about the pagoda and the stuff that I've used in the past. If you go to my blog, which is makemomentsmatter.org, and search recorder or recorder karate, see I'm searching with my keyboard, you can pull up and see all the pictures of all the displays I've done in the past. I've done pagodas, I've done guitars, I've done all different sorts of stuff. It'll give you ideas. One that I really love is somebody had different colored plates, like paper plates, and they stuck them to the wall, and they had kids like clip from one to the next. That was cool, but when I have like 400 kids testing, not cool to write all those, clips. So there are a lot of different things you can do, but check out my blog and you can see some of those options. One of the other things that I would say is I send recorder homework home with kids, and again, because Barb said in her book, like, reproduce as needed with your students. I have, for each belt, on a little half sheet, I've printed up what they need, and I put it in this handy dandy like recorder homework box. Oh, and let me just show you again how color coding nerd I am. The first belt is white, and then yellow, and then orange, and so each little piece of homework is stuck in here, and kids can reach in and say like, oh, I need the blue belt. Here it is. It's actually just a copy of the recorder testing stations, but they can take it home and practice. They can go online onto that recorder dojo online and practice with the music, and they'll be totally set to go. The recorder homework has been super duper helpful. On the back, like on yellow belt on the back, I took another thing from the recorder karate book on how to make a good tone and how to play, and I copied that on the back so that they have something else. On some of the backs of the other recorder, I'll put other songs that match that concept, or I'll put other things that match along that they can practice as well. You can do whatever you want. But I wanted them to have something that was easy for me to reproduce on a copier that would help them they could take home. You can use that dojo online. It's really cool. I take a little bit of time in every class that I'm doing recorder karate to show them how to get there. I have a link from my school website to take them to the dojo online. They just need their password and username to do that. And the other thing is that some people are like, well, but I have that one kid who's like really, really good who's going to make it to black belt in like 3 days. Well, maybe, but woo, there's recorder karate too. And this came out just a couple years ago, but it adds more songs that you can add at every belt. It adds some past black belt songs, black belt level 3, black belt level 4. And I don't know, a lot of people do different things. You get different color yarn, or you can get multicolor, whatever. I got these really fancy dancy metallic threads, and for kids who are past black belt, these are way thinner than the black belt, so I let them choose what color they want, and I tie it onto their black belt, so you can be varying degrees of black belt. I'm only a black belt. I'm not a black belt plus, so I have some kids who are better than me. But anyway, that's a lot of what I do with recorder karate. I hope this has been a little bit helpful. If you have questions about any of the stuff that I've shown you or any of the stuff that I've mentioned, please leave the questions in the comments, because I will come back later tonight or whatever, and I'll look through and I can leave comments or send you links to stuff. The other thing I would say is, again, check my blog, which is makemomentsmatter.org, and type in recorder karate in the search box, and it'll take you to all those articles and things I've written, and a lot of resources that have worked for me. But yeah, leave me questions. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. And I'll go through and type you a little message, or shoot me a message, or find me on Instagram or whatever. I hope this has been a little bit helpful. I love recorder karate. I think you should too. And don't get discouraged if you get the book and you're like, but this isn't working. There are a lot of things you can add and supplement to help kids learn a lot better. And it's been super crazy motivational. So much so that the strings teacher at one of my schools was like, I'm stealing that. I'm going to make orchestra karate. Like, great, you go for it. And it worked really, really super well. So I hope this has been helpful. Leave me questions. Have a great day, and go buy Recorder Karate Book 1. It is totally worth it. All right, thanks, guys.